Lung Yuan Chapter 5 Cruel Rules. Lung Yuan immediately thought of how her parents had died miserably. Looking at this scar-faced man, a strange blue light appeared in her pupils. Little Yen, his cultivation base has reached the 9th heaven stage of qi condensation. You can't beat him, said Gu Nianru. But Lung Yuan had already walked out, a 2-foot-long sword in her hand. It was a specially made weapon for her age. The scar-faced man smiled slightly. His luck was excellent. Lung Yuan had actually challenged him. According to the Corrupt Path's rules, these disciples would only have one chance to challenge them. As long as they passed, they would receive a large reward. But there was another rule. That was that they couldn't kill these children. However, the children challenging them didn't know about that rule. For Lung Yuan to challenge him now meant that she couldn't challenge him again in the future. He would receive an easy reward now. The people like him were most afraid of these disciples growing up before challenging them. Then they would definitely die. Lung Yuan unsheathed her sword. Even at such a young age, the whistling sound of her sword was so sharp. That was enough to show how strong her wrist strength was. Even some of the elders couldn't help nodding. This Lung Yuan was so young, but she was made of good stuff. The scar-faced man snorted and raised his sword. Lung Yuan's attack was easily blocked. In terms of power, she was unable to compete with him. Little Yen, cried Gu Nianru. Lung Yuan clenched her teeth. Blood was pouring out of her hand, but she seemed to not be able to sense it. She repeatedly slashed her sword. The corrupt experts shook their heads. Her first slash had been good, but by the third slash, she was just randomly hacking. The scar-faced man snorted. His sword danced and Lung Yuan was forced back 3 times. Blood dripped out of the corner of her mouth. After all, she was just a child, and she was too lacking when it came to power. Furthermore, as she became furious, she even forgot to circulate her qi. Without circulating her qi, she was immediately sent flying back, a cut on her cheek. Blood slowly flowed out. She knelt there, trying to get up. But she didn't succeed. You really are too useless. I still remember that your father was that dark-skinned fellow, correct? When he died, you retaliated and even managed to kill Li Laosan. Over 2 years have passed, but you haven't grown at all. Don't even think about getting revenge in your life. You're fated to forever be weak. In the future, you'll only be able to crawl beneath the feet of the strong, sneered the scar-faced man. That was their mission. They were supposed to provoke these disciples to get stronger. They wanted them to be furious. They wanted them to go crazy. Lung Yuan was on the ground. The scar-faced man was too powerful. She felt like her body was about to collapse. Her mind entered a muddled state. She could vaguely hear Gu Nianru's cries, but that voice seemed so distant. Just as Lung Yuan was about to fall unconscious, she entered a strange space. There was a long-haired woman was in front of her. That woman was holding something in her hand. That was all Lung Yuan could tell. She was unable to see anything else about her figure. Who are you? Cried Lung Yuan. This was her second time seeing this figure. You still aren't angry enough. This way, you won't be able to obtain the power that should be yours. He is right, you really are too useless. You are unable to get revenge for your parents. They died for nothing. That woman shook her head and then disappeared. No, I will get revenge. I'll get revenge for my parents. I'm not trash, I'll get revenge. Lung Yuan slowly raised her head. Her originally black and white eyes now twinkled with a blue light. It was a bit strange. Originally, everyone had thought that the battle was over. But Lung Yuan suddenly crawled up. She raised her sword and walked over to the scar-faced man. Her eyes, the scar-faced man's heart shook. He suddenly recalled that when Lung Yuan had killed Li Laosan, her eyes had also changed color. Lung Yuan's sword slashed down. What startled everyone was that this attack brought with it a whistling sound that made it seem like it was tearing apart space. That wasn't a kind of power she should possess. The scar-faced man hastily raised his sword. As a result, sparks flew. He was forced back several steps. Just as he was knocked back, Lung Yuan's figure appeared in front of him. With a slash of her sword, his leg was severed. What? The experts' expressions all changed. Lung Yuan's power was extremely strange. They were unable to see through it. The scar-faced man hadn't expected a child to possess such power. Seeing another slash coming toward him, he hastily dodged. His sword was knocked out of his hand. Lung Yuan's sword flew. The scar-faced man's other leg and arms were all cut off. He screamed, but Lung Yuan was merciless. She thought of the love her parents had given her, and all kinds of scenes surfaced in her mind. She became more and more infuriated because these people had killed those that she loved the most. Lung Yueyan's sword repeatedly slashed down. The scar-faced man was turned into mincemeat in front of everyone's shocked gazes. Suddenly, the blue light in Lung Yueyan's eyes faded, and she collapsed limply. Gu Nianru hastily ran over to support her. Lung Yueyan had succeeded in getting revenge. Countless other disciples immediately challenged the ones that had harmed them. Some succeeded, some failed. This revenge was a trial for these disciples. These were the ways the corrupt path raised its disciples. 3 days later, Lung Yueyan and Gu Nianru were split into a group of 500 people. They cultivated together. They received missions to hunt magical beasts, and with Lung Yueyan and Gu Nianru present, they never encountered any danger. 3 months later, Lung Yueyan broke through to blood condensation. At this time, they tested their spirit roots. As a result, the higher-ups were disappointed to see that her spirit root was only silver grade. But Gu Nianru's spirit root had reached the dark gold rank. After testing their spirit roots, they underwent an extremely cruel challenge. Their group of disciples was about to undergo a knockout competition. 2 people would fight. The winner would live, while the loser would die. When they heard of this, everyone was dumbfounded. Their opponent was specially chosen by the situation. If the 2 disciples were unable to determine a winner within an incense stick's worth of time, the elder would directly cut off both their heads. Battle isn't a game. The corrupt god does not accept blasphemy. The goal of the battle is to kill your opponent. If you're afraid of death, you'll only die faster. The corrupt god has blessed all of you so that you'll become the strongest warriors. It's not for trash afraid of dying. If your faith is strong enough, you'll be fearless. Then you'll obtain the god's power and be unrivaled. If you're afraid of dying, it's a blasphemy to the corrupt god. The god's displeasure will end your life, said the elder sternly. Following that, 2 disciples immediately walked out. At the same time, they roared and began a fierce battle. They fought with their full strength, each of their attacks vicious, a true battle to the death. In just 10 moves, one of them killed the other, ending the battle. The thing that made Lung Yueyan feel extremely fortunate about was that she wasn't in the same section as Gu Nianru. After her experience from last time, she had gained a slight understanding of the essence of battle. Her opponent was easily killed. As for Gu Nianru, she defeated her opponent in just 3 moves. Her opponent was dejected and killed by the elder. The fate of losers was death. Over 500 experts were cut down to half. In their original group of 10 people, other than Lung Yueyan and Gu Nianru, the rest had all died during this competition. Lung Yueyan and Gu Nianru were dejected, but the elder didn't give them much time to feel sorrow. They were soon sent to a small town to slaughter the heathens there. They were heathens that had disrespected their god. When she watched those countless disciples slaughtering those unarmed commoners, Lung Yueyan couldn't help softly asking Gu Nianru, "Big sister, why do we live?" Gu Nianru looked at her and smiled slightly. "We live for ourselves. As for them, perhaps it's to vent their feelings. They feel much hatred inside. Perhaps doing this can make them feel a bit better." Gu Nianru and Lung Yueyan didn't participate in the slaughter. They just watched the other corrupt disciples roar and slaughter the commoners. They held each other as they watched on. Once the heathens were slaughtered, they disbanded and returned to their sect to cultivate. But the corrupt path's cultivation was extremely cruel. The elimination competitions continued. They happened periodically. Sometimes it would be half a year between them. Sometimes there would be 2 in 1 month. Time passed bit by bit. The struggle between them only grew more and more intense, and the people were growing more and more vicious. This year, Lung Yueyan was 13 years old and already a bone-forging expert. Her beauty was also gradually showing itself. Quite a few disciples secretly set their intentions on her, but they only dared to think of that. That was because they were afraid of a certain person, Gu Nianru. Gu Nianru's name seemed to be amicable one, but she would hunt down whoever dared to provoke Lung Yueyan to the ends of the earth. But once they reached the bone-forging realm, everyone's cultivation slowed down. The bone-forging realm was extremely important. It was a realm created through amassing resources. In this realm, the resources had to be concentrated on the absolute geniuses. Just now, Lung Yueyan had killed her final opponent. But she didn't feel the slightest bit of excitement. Instead, her expression was exceedingly grave. Within her original group of over 500 people, the only ones left were her and Gu Nianru. Furthermore, according to the rules, the 2 would now have to fight. In other words, only one of them would be able to live. It was an extremely cruel reality. It was just like the past. Once the 2 had won, they returned behind the mountains to amuse themselves. Gu Nianru had also grown into a beautiful woman. She was like a lotus flower blooming just out of the surface, and anyone who looked at her would feel a good feeling. When she smiled, those deep dimples were exceptionally enchanting. Big sister, tomorrow we'll have to, Lung Yuyan's voice was a bit hoarse. Will you kill me? Gu Nianru softly brushed Lung Yuyan's hair, a tender expression on her face. Gu Nianru, to care for someone softly.